Okay, it's October 12th when we're recording this. We got Halloween coming up, and I'm always baffled at different stores and how they handle Halloween treats because I know the most common thing I always get from people that I talk to is, "Oh, the Halloween decorations or candies are already out at Costco." So we're talking treats today. We got Halloween coming up, but we can have this conversation go beyond just Halloween and talking it in general with treats. We got a few points, some tips. We got some scenarios. We even got some resources that we can reference. So um, let's see where we can take this conversation about treats. Who wants to go first? What's the most common thing that you talk about with people, have heard, have seen, when your clients or people around you talk about treats? What do they say? What are they telling you? What do you hear about treats?
Yeah, I can definitely go. So around this time of year seems to be when the treats conversation starts to come up a little bit more. It's the change of season. It's also for some people marks going into a highly holiday celebration time of year. Think of the fall going into, the winter season and then into the new year. So I find there's an increase for some people around that. So the conversation of treats and navigating that starts to come up on top of, Brandon, to your point, and I can speak to this yesterday because I literally was at Costco, was the temptation all of a sudden starts to pick up. So not only do you have Halloween candy out at this time, on top of all the things maybe from Thanksgiving, all the goodies, you've also got the um, the holiday Christmas candy and stuff also right in the exact same aisle. So there's this clash of temptation readily available already. And it's super easy to walk by and be like, oh, hey, I'm going to pick this up for later. But later doesn't seem to happen. It seems to be it's in the house. Now we're going to open it because we've got it.
Right. When is later? Oh, when is later? Matthew, what do you hear? What have you heard recently?
So one for me that is this is more of a year-round thing, but it's more like how many can I have or how much can I have? Like wanting an
Mm,
Yeah.
exact number of the amount of a certain food that they can or should eat.
the classic, tell me how many I can and can't have. Yep. Uh, I can't remember a season where I have not heard that one. And I mean, there's reasons why people probably want to hear very clear cut things from us when we're talking to people. But how do you usually handle that conversation? If somebody asks you, how many can I have? What do you do with that?
Well, I try to move away from exact numbers and try to put things in the context of the totality of their diet. So if it's making up a large amount of what they're eating every day, if it's if it's getting in the way of specific goals, that could be an issue. If it's very strong, overly strong temptations, and it's just more of a constant thing, or it becomes more impulsive, or it becomes obsessive, then those are the areas where it's a bit more of a concern, as opposed to just the occasional treat on like a weekend or with a certain holiday or just a small amount various days during the week. So just trying to figure out where in that spectrum that thing kind of lies.
Hmm.
I can even and build on that, as well, because I think it speaks a lot to our diet culture. We've put treats and all of those things in a category of we can't have, shouldn't have. That increases the want, the desire to have it, and then it does come down to the question of like how much, because we've been told, oh, don't have this, you shouldn't have this is bad, and that's not. um, so for me, working with a lot of clients, it's reflecting on, what is it about that treat that you're wanting to experience or get out of? What is it we're trying to accomplish by having that? Where is it showing up? Is it in a context of a healthy relationship? Are we okay with just having that chocolate bar and being okay and being able to move on and not associate guilt? And I think that's the big part with treats is enjoy it. There is this cycle, this loop that puts us back into I shouldn't have and guilt, and now I feel bad and I'm going to eat more because I feel bad and I'm now off my health goals, right? So a lot of that is reframing for me that purpose of treat. Like what is that in what context?
And I something I think you've both mentioned thus far is that with regards to treats is that there's an individual element to it. What constitutes a treat? What does treat mean? And it can be a cultural thing. It can be very. I mean, it could be a generational thing too. I mean, I've even with the people that I've talked to across different age groups, you tend to hear different vibes. May use similar words, sometimes completely different words, but I think understanding what treat means and not just because some people even when we talk snacks, some people immediately just think of snack foods like salty snacks, sweet snacks. When people think of snacks in the context of a miniature meal or something that gets you between a meal, like it's not large. Treats can kind of be the same way for some people, and so there's a wide variety. Which I guess then, if going back to the questions that I asked you at the beginning, both of you, if somebody comes up to you and starts talking about treats, if we were to just go and start providing answers and insights and feedback and some tips without exploring what that actually means for that person first, we'd probably be it carries a lot of assumption. I think because we then are then guessing what they mean by it when we actually might not know yet what they mean by that.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I work with lots of clients on is okay, if we're asking a lot about treats, then I ask them to do some homework of reflecting on it. So like where are they feeling that a treat is coming in? And like to your point, what and then how often is it happening and in what kind of pattern is it having? Just because I'm not able to know that, right? Or how we're defining that treat. So that's actually a strategy that I recommend for most clients when this starts to come up is to do some reflecting on it because we're so habitual with treats as well. It's coming out of tiredness or a pick me up in the afternoon or de-stressing after the end of the day. It's very individualized of when and what they're looking for. So that reflection is a really big piece to start having that conversation.
Hmm. Agreed. When we think about treats, there's usually a lot of context around treats. And I guess this kind of is an extension to the previous points that are already mentioned. What relevance do the treats have in different situations? And then I'm thinking, because of the time of year it is right now, I'm thinking holidays, celebrations. Matthew, how do you talk to people about how to handle treats during specific times of year and not just in a general sense?
Yes. So during more like holiday times, the a lot of it is just not allowing restrictions of treats to get in the way of enjoying the holiday itself, enjoying the social aspect of the celebration itself, and again, just allowing yourself to enjoy and knowing that in the context of this is just a celebration, this isn't what necessarily every day or every week looks like. It just, again, allowing themselves to enjoy the experience, but also keeping things in mind, such as was this treat actually satisfying to me? Was this something that did I enjoy the experience? Do I feel that this has been enough? Not feeling that you have to either have a tiny amount or have a large amount. Just taking the time to enjoy it, keeping in mind the portion, and yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And another thing would be considering it in the context of what the full day looks like. So there are some scenarios where some people are prone to more, you could call it like saving up their calories or their food for the day and trying to load it all at the end with the treats. Again, just
Mm-hmm.
trying to move back from that towards more moderation as well.
Why would that be a good idea? Because I hear that a lot. I talk with people about that a lot. Why is that something that you would advise somebody to not do, to save up till the end of the day?
Well, because if you are extremely hungry at the end of the day, you may end up first in the context of, let's say their goal is to, they're restricting because they don't want to eat excessively. Being excessively hungry at the end of the day in itself can lead to overeating, which goes against what the initial goal would have been, and that's an issue for some people.
Mm.
And another thing would be just, again, letting them know that it is something that we can work together to fit in the context of a full day with your regular meals, and it doesn't, again, need to be taking away from other meals in the day just so that you can have that one thing.
Andrew, you want to add something to that? You look like you're going to add something to that.
I was thinking about that. So that's definitely it of even walking people through, why do they think they need to wait and hold it all in? And usually it kind of comes down to sometimes like, oh, they're trying to save calories or whatever. But which then, for eating later in the day, if I think about like Thanksgiving, a lot of people wanting to save up or whatever. Um, and yeah, to your point, Matthew, it just kind of builds up from there. I have used a strategy with clients around this of, okay, if the goal is to kind of be more mindful over these times, is to make sure we're eating regular, because that's kind of your foundation, that's your basics, that kind of stays no matter what the holiday season is. But then what if I was to give you money and I was to say, how would you spend this and what would you spend that on? And whatever you would spend it on should be something that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to love, and it's going to be awesome, and you're going to have all the good feels associated with it. So it's trying to put it in context of, we still can't forget those basics, that foundation, but those extras, like what would you spend it on? And for some people that really hits home is, maybe they would leave, I don't know. Like an example for me is I'm going to eat stuffing over mashed potatoes. That's where I'm going to spend it.
I like that analogy because it it kind of is obviously a thing that people think of a lot, how to spend money, budgeting, those types of things. And in the context of goals around eating and nutrition, it can definitely be transferable thought process. I agree. I agree. I think for a lot of my clients, one thing that I talk to them about in the context of treats, whether it's a meal or a single food or something like this, is it's often the experience itself, which is the desired thing. Like the satisfaction comes from the experience, and I think when I've realized this in the past kind of like few months with some of my clients, and I think this is partially where the strategy of when you're consuming a treat is choose something that you enjoy, but take time to enjoy it. Don't just like mow it down very quickly, because then the experience is gone within 5 seconds. And then, of course, you may be more tempted to have seconds, thirds, fourths, whatever. But if you're eating slowly, yeah, technically you're not consuming the thing quickly, which is obviously the opposite to the thing that I just said. But you're extending the time of which you are exposed to said experience. So if you take one slice of pumpkin pie as an example, and you have that one slice of pumpkin pie and you eat it in 5 minutes, and you do that same thing for 20 minutes and end up eating 4 slices of pie, versus having one slice of pie and taking 20 minutes to eat it, you probably would feel the same in terms of how satisfied and did it tick the boxes for you, kind of thing. And so, and I've talked to some clients about this strategy. They've tried it, and it kind of, I can see them on the other side of the screen, just like they're like thinking, and their like eyes are going all over the place, and they're just like, wait a second, because the math might not math for them right away, but then the more that they think, they're like, oh yeah, that actually kind of makes sense. Um, because it and where this comes from, a lot of the time is just, there's foods that people resonate with, nostalgia, things that remind them of family, certain events, things when they were kids, so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's one that I've found quite interesting to talk about with people is not just telling somebody be mindful of it and take longer to eat, but like why? What are you actually doing here besides just eating something?
And to expand on that, one way to enhance an experience like that is to also, again, not just take your time, but also removing distractions that may be around you to try to enhance that feeling. So, slowly eating, but also focusing on just the eating, not your phone at the same time, not other potential distractions, but again, enhancing that focus to also enhance the enjoyment of eating that treat or that food.
Totally.
That makes me think because both of what you're talking about, and I do recommend this to my clients, and it is a piece of my Viva plan, is that's very new for people to slow down, take it all in because we're so used to being in a hurry. And I have used mindful eating meditations for clients to do that with a treat or something that they're eating to actually be able to, how does this taste? How does this smell? How does this look? What kind of memories is this eliciting? How do I feel after? And most clients, after they do that, are like, oh, Andrea, that feels so weird. Like, we're just not used to doing that, but it's a good practice. And some people will say after the treat, oh, like they actually didn't get anything out of it that they thought they would because they've never sat that long, like 20 minutes with a piece of pumpkin pie. Like, we're not used to that. So those kind of meditations on mindful eating and mindful eating practices can be really helpful for people.
Actually, I think that's a spectacular idea because I know, like for myself, and I've talked with the clients as well about if you're removing distractions during eating meals, snacks, treats, whatever, and you just sit there and stare into space, and you're just like, oh, what am I supposed to think about now? And it's particularly challenging for my clients with ADHD, unsurprisingly. But having a structure, whether it's an audio or a video, a meditation, or sheet, printable, whatever, one could say like, well, I'm supposed to have less distractions, but then I'm having somebody guide me through that. Isn't that a distraction? Well, I guess, yeah, technically, but at the same time, having no path to take with your thoughts during that process may be equally distracting, and you're just kind of sitting there and your mind's just kind of going wherever. Whereas having something, somebody direct that process, if it's unfamiliar, may be helpful. And I I need to do that with my clients more because I think that is quite valuable. The way that you described it, Andrea, I don't do that enough with people, and I think it's a really cool exercise.
It's, yeah, I would encourage anybody to do it or to try it. It's a really cool experience. And 100% to your point is we don't know what to do with those thoughts. So sometimes we do need that gentle guiding of like, ooh, what do I do with my time with eating this pie? Yeah.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. We got a few points left on we haven't covered yet. Matthew, what else? What else comes to mind around treats?
Another thing that comes to mind just on the point of trying to be more mindful with the treats is considering, yeah, after you've thought, like, do I actually enjoy this? Making sure that you're making it worth not just making it worth the experience, making it worth the cost. yeah, ensuring that you're choosing things that you are truly enjoying based on what you learn from the more mindful techniques. Another thing to consider is the context of the number of the treats, just going back to the amount that we were talking about at the beginning. If someone feels that they're not having some kind of appropriate amount, maybe consider why they feel that is the way. So, is there, yeah, do you feel some sort of obligation that you need to change this number? And if you do feel that way, then try to consider why. What is the reason that you want to change the amount of treats you're having? Is
Yeah.
Yeah, and just trying to explore that and why the amount of treats you're having may make you feel a certain way.
Right. So helping people think through the process of why this treat, why this amount. Is it something that you want, or is it something that you heard, or is just kind of ingrained in you? Which I think goes back to the, the diet culture and societal pressure part, which maybe even just kind of family dynamics as well about why this. And again, spending some time unpacking that with clients, because I agree. I think sometimes when people think about those things, they just kind of automatically are like, "Oh, I want to do this," and when you ask them why, and they're like, "Well, actually, I don't know, I don't know why." It's interesting.
I think one of the common things like that people would, ask a dietitian, and I get this question a lot, and to that exact same point is they just want to know what to replace it with. So if they're having a treat, it's like, well, what do I have instead? And I usually challenge my clients of like, okay, well, if you're craving, I always go back to pie, mostly because I love pie. So that's where my preference is. But anyway, if it would be like, okay, instead of eating that apple pie, just go eat celery. Like our brain doesn't do that. Like
Yeah,
as
that's
much
not
as,
even the same thing, even in the same
right?
ballpark.
So people are looking for like, oh, what can I have instead that's going to give me that same feeling and that same texture? And I always, think about like, where did that come from? Like, why do you feel like you can't have the pie and you have to eat celery? So finding out that why, unpacking it with clients is really important around where that's coming from. And I think I surprise most clients most when I'm like, you know what? You don't want to swap it, because if you go down and eat celery and you're looking for apple pie, you're going to be A, incredibly disappointed, and B, likely looking still for other things until you end up back at the apple pie. So sometimes it's better actually just to have the treat, move on, and try not. I don't know if you guys get that, but I get that question all the time. We're gonna have instead. What's equivalent to this ice cream? Well, like nothing. It's good ice
Right.
cream.
Is there an equivalent? Depends. Depends on
Yeah,
the item.
yeah. But our brain has never been like, cool, I'm gonna pick the celery with the apple pie there. Like said nobody ever. Unless you didn't really like apple pie and love celery, I guess. But
Celery pie.
oh
If we're getting
no.
into pot pies, but that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. If you would replace the apples in an apple pie with celery, I can envision the disgusted faces that are the people probably listening to what I just said there. As yeah, but I mean, some people really enjoy celery, which is totally fine. But I mean, um,
Totally.
I know that if we were to try an alternative to apple pie, celery is probably not the first thing that comes to mind.
No. No. And I think, although we didn't touch on it, although there is, a lot of physiological responses around with craving. So we know there's a lot of nostalgic and all of those kind of things, but we forget that we have a reward center in our brain too. Like oh my gosh, there goes my brain. Clearly I'm too busy thinking about pie. But anyway, um, there's three centers: the hedonic, homeostatic, and the executor function. So the way cravings work is it's acting on all of those, like your desire, your want, when you have it, what happens with that? Is it a reward? Does it feel good? And then who's actually is your brain making the decision to engage in it or not? So we forget that there's a lot of components with cravings that are sometimes in control and sometimes we are not in control of them,
Would
which could be a
you
whole podcast on its own. But
Oh,
anyway.
totally. Would you say that for some people? trying to find an alternative or trying to combat the craving or desire to have a specific treat. Let's go with pie. Let's say you really love pie. Is there any merit to the idea that trying to find an alternative or trying to find a way to combat that craving and desire for pie is kind of counterproductive?
Uh, yes, mostly because of what we've been speaking throughout this is that a lot of other factors drive that want decision. So if we're looking for even something as crunchy or whatever, and we're not able to replicate that, then we're not going to feel satisfied. We're not going to feel that we accomplished anything. We're not going to hit that system, and we are going to keep seeking. We do have a seeking behavior um, to be able to fix that. For some people, the research will show it's stronger in others and not as strong in other people as well. So kind of dependent. There's other factors that drive that system. So that's a lot of the times with my clients when they're asking that question of like, what do I have instead? It's actually sometimes going back to what we've talked about is the why. Why is that happening? Because sometimes it's non-food strategies that are needed in those cases, right? If it's tired, maybe we actually get to bed earlier, or if it's stressed, maybe we do something that's a stress coping to satisfy that seeking that we're looking for.
Makes sense. Yeah. 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 Okay. We touched on many, many points. I think, as I've probably said every episode thus far, we could continue talking for hours. Any final thoughts on treats, time of year around treats, anything related to this conversation that is a burning thought in your mind you want to get out before we wrap up?
I can go first. So just in the context of holidays and any kind of celebration, just remembering that this is a time for enjoyment and considering why the gathering is happening, trying to get together with others, trying to celebrate something, and we can have a balance between that and also the food. The food itself doesn't need to be the primary focus, but it is also appropriate to take the time to enjoy the special food that we are having for that special occasion.
I like that. I like that. Andrea, anything from you?
Mine would be adjusting goals and expectations. So the holiday season is not the time that we're going to nail everything when it comes to eating. Expectation are we're going to be presented with lots of things. So sometimes it's refocusing goals on things that are more in control and then not worrying so much about the other pieces to be able to enjoy. A few Halloween pieces of candy are not going to derail your whole health goal.
Yeah, and I'm gonna wrap with a thought that's kind of related to the something that both of you said, and this is something I tell my clients a lot: is if if there's not really a lot of solid alternatives to something, or if it's not a huge significant factor in the totality of your overall diet, then trying to combat it or fight it may actually lead to consequences that are maybe not towards the goals that you're wanting to aim for. So planning for it, accounting for it, coming to terms with it might actually be the better decision, because then you can feel better about having done it. You can enjoy it more. And then afterwards, you're not bombarded in your mind with a bunch of guilt and shame and, oh, I should have done this, or I should have did this better, or so on and so forth. You can just move on to whatever is the next thing that you're wanting to do. All right, let's wrap there. Awesome conversation on treats. I don't know what our next one will be, but I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, let's end her there. Have a good rest of your day.